In this lesson, you will learn how to choose the correct case form in some instances in which it's very difficult to hear what the correct case form is. One of these instances is when you have a pronoun in an appositive. An appositive is a noun or pronoun that is placed beside another noun or pronoun to identify or describe it. So it's not like an adjective. Appositives are going to be often, but not always, set off in parentheses, and they basically are just another way of saying the word that it's describing. So here's an example. Ms. Hastings, my English teacher, likes making grammar videos. The appositive here is my English teacher. It's a noun phrase. It renames or identifies Ms. Hastings. I can take it out of the sentence and I'm left with a grammatically complete, correct sentence. Ms. Hastings likes making grammar videos. The appositive just helps to identify the noun, Ms. Hastings. But it's not an adjective because, as you see here, teacher is a noun. It's a noun phrase. So that's what makes it an appositive rather than an adjective. The pronouns we and us are sometimes followed by appositives that identify the pronouns. We pianists will have to rent pianos for the recital. So we is followed by the appositive pianists. It identifies the we. The conductor pointed toward us violinists. Violinists is the appositive that identifies the us. Use the following steps to determine whether to use we or us in front of an appositive. First, get rid of the appositive. I'll show you an example in a moment. Second, determine whether the pronoun is functioning as a subject or an object. You may need to review nominative versus objective case pronouns in order to do this. And three, choose the correct case form. So let's try it. The oboe players are having lunch with we or us cellists. The first thing we want to do is get rid of the appositive. So get rid of cellists. Now we're in a position to really be able to hear what the correct answer is. The oboe players are having lunch with we. Or the oboe players are having lunch with us. At this point, we should be able to hear that us is the correct form. But to double check, just to make sure, let's go through the grammar of it. What part of a sentence am I looking for here? Well, with is a preposition, which means that I'm looking for the object of a preposition. So when I choose the correct case form, I need the object form of the pronoun, which we know would be us. So I've both been able to hear that us is the correct form, and I've checked it knowing my grammar rules. Sometimes a pronoun is used in an appositive, helping to identify the noun in front of it. Here's an example. The Sopranos, Ava and I sang a duet. The sentence could easily read, the Sopranos sang a duet. Ava and I helps tell or identify who the Sopranos are. I and Ava both identify the Sopranos. The Sopranos is the subject of the sentence, so I would use the nominative form I as opposed to me in this sentence, because the case of the pronoun is determined by the case of the noun it identifies. So if we look at the next example, Holly sang for the two tenors, Marcello and he or him. So here we want to figure out what word is being identified by the appositive. In this case, it's going back to tenors. What part of a sentence is tenors? For is a preposition, so tenors is the object of the preposition. That means I need to use the object form of the pronoun, which is him. The second time that it can sometimes be difficult to figure out what pronoun to use is when you have a comparison that leads to an incomplete construction. Comparisons are made using than or as to complete a clause, in other words, to complete the sentence, to complete the idea. So here's an example of two comparisons. Lily has more CDs than she has. The sentence is comparing how many CDs Lily has to how many she has. In the second example, Carlos can play the saxophone as fast as I can play, as is comparing Carlos's quickness or playing to mine or how fast I can play. But often in such clauses, the second verb is understood, which means it can be left out. When this happens, the construction is called an elliptical clause, also known as an incomplete construction. It is perfectly acceptable to say Lily has more CDs than she. It's understood that the verb would be does or has, so I don't need to say it. The same thing happens in the second example. Carlos can play the saxophone as fast as I. Again, the verb is understood, so I don't need to say it. But what gets tricky is that over time, we've become used to saying Lily has more CDs than me. Lily has more CDs than her, which technically is incorrect. So we have to retrain ourselves to use the correct form. The way to do this is to fill in the missing word from the elliptical clause to write the verb, and this will help you determine the correct case. Here's an example. We play more concerts than they or them. It's not a good idea to rely on your ear here, not yet anyway. So what you should do is figure out what verb would go here, write it down. We play more concerts than they do, or than they play. And it's easy to hear once I put the verb in that I need to use the nominative or subject form. You wouldn't say we play more concerts than them do. Second example, no one likes chocolate as much as she or her. You need to fill this in by adding the verb. No one likes chocolate as much as she does, or as much as her does. Our ears can hear. I need she as the subject of the verb does. Now here's an example of a sentence that you could actually use either form depending on what the writer intends to say. If you were writing a sentence like this, it would be really important to be very clear about what it is you're trying to say. So let's look at both cases. Do you visit Grandma as often as we or us? Let's assume you're trying to say, do you visit Grandma as often as blank visit Grandma? In this case, we know that we would need the subject form. Do you visit Grandma as often as we visit Grandma? We need the subject to complete the clause visit Grandma. But I could take the other form in this sentence. Do you visit Grandma as often as we or us? Maybe the writer intends to say, do you visit Grandma as often as you visit us? Here, I would need the object form because I'm looking for the direct object of visit. So in these cases, you need to pay a lot of attention to what it is you're trying to say as a writer and make sure that you're choosing the correct form to communicate exactly what it is you want to say. Now let's try some practice. Select the correct version of the pronoun in parentheses. At this time, you should pause the video, do the practice, and then resume playing the video to hear the correct answers. We or us music lovers are big fans of the opera Turandot, written by Puccini. This is an appositive, so we would use our trick of getting rid of the appositive music lovers. We or us are big fans of the opera Turandot. We would say we are big fans rather than us are big fans because we need the subject form of the verb. The opera is about a clever princess named Turandot who meets a prince even more clever than she or her. This is an example of an elliptical clause. So what we should do is fill in the other verb. The opera is about a clever princess named Turandot who meets a prince even more clever than blank is. We would need the subject form, even more clever than she is, in this sentence. Turandot has promised to marry any man who can answer 3 riddles. The Prince of Persia and the 12 other suitors have failed the test. Those unfortunate men, the 12 suitors and he or him have been beheaded. If we look at this sentence, the pronoun in question is part of an appositive phrase. Those unfortunate men, the 12 suitors and he or him. So here I have to look at what part of a sentence the word the appositive identifies is. In this case, it's men. Men functions as the subject of the sentence, so I need the nominative form of the pronoun he. The other way to test this, those unfortunate men, get rid of the appositive. He has been beheaded. And then you know you have the correct version. An unknown prince believes he can do better than they or them. Again, an elliptical clause. Fill it in. An unknown prince believes he can do better than they can do. Finally, Turandot feels confident that no one will be smarter than she or her. Elliptical clause. Turandot feels confident that no one will be smarter than she is. I need the subject form.